Christopher Nolan began his journey into filmmaking as early as the age of 7, despite never going into any professional study related to filmmaking. He is almost a completely self-taught filmmaker who directs and writes prominently for his current lineup of 11 films, arguably most well known for his Dark Knight trilogy, but also, and just as significantly, his distinct style that dominates the action and thriller genre amidst a collection of varying settings, concepts, and mixtures of other genres and subgenres. Nolan is a filmmaker whose stories directly are not incredibly affected by the societal factors surrounding him. However, almost all filmmakers begin with very little budget to work with, and Nolan was no different, struggling around for some time with the reality of the institutional influence he was forced to accept. While struggling to find anyone to help him produce his film, no organisations gave him a chance, a truly brutal industry as is fairly well established. Nolan describes the UK, the area in which he grew up in and looked for work in, as a very clubby kind of place. Never had any support whatsoever from the British film industry. There's a very limited pool of finance in the UK, proving Nolan to be extremely unsuccessful in his attempts at filmmaking, failing to get his projects off the ground, with various rejection letters piling up around him. Thus, Nolan took it upon himself to kickstart one of his projects, no, not the website, with a measly $6,000 budget and created the following, the neo-noir crime thriller film that has the protagonist find himself amiss in the criminal underworld. The film was critically acclaimed thanks to Nolan's style, and thus he generated his own breakthrough that led to his $9 million budget for Memento. Contrastingly, Nolan now struggles with a very different problem amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. His latest film, titled Tenet After, Nolan has developed a phenomenal reputation of originality, creativity and scale, squirms to release in theatres because of both laws preventing people going to theatres, at least for over 2 hours in China's case, or from just general fear from audiences contracting the virus from prolonged potential contact or closeness with others. Nolan generates over 50% of his box office revenue from overseas theatres, yet China's law means that the 2.5 hour long movie is yet to see a release anytime soon in China. The distribution stage of production has been heavily set back as a result of these institutional factors, influencing Nolan to come to the decision to first unveil the trailer on Fortnite to keep the anticipation active during a global pandemic, Fortnite being the popular battle royale game with a registered player base of more than 350 million players. The film's hefty $200 million budget means that releasing the film is an incredible risk to the returns the film will generate, but Warner Bros keeps it at the forefront of their releases, being one of their most promising to reintroduce audiences to theatres, pushing it back consistently by a few weeks at a time. A major aspect of why Nolan's films are so successful, however, is not because of the money he has already, but it's because he shows people new perspectives in immersive, thrilling, and especially engaging ways, these being new philosophical ways to look at the mind, at morality, identity and purpose, fear, chaos, pain, heroism, grief, existence, and life. Nolan encompasses himself in these movies, but it feels like he encompasses us all. No matter how the story twists and turns and travels back in time, Nolan gives us perspective. He might show us inner peace, or he might show us the opposite. Nolan knows what to tell modern audiences and what they need to hear, where we live in a world of selfishness, disaster, and ugliness sometimes, and so the way Nolan views these things in the world come into these stories. In reference to The Dark Knight Rises, Nolan writes, "I love when people get interested in the politics of it, when they see something in it that moves them in some way. But I'm not being disingenuous when I say that we write from a place of, what's the worst thing our villain Bane can do? What are we most afraid of? That's both all it is and the biggest generalization in history, because there's a world we can explore in that statement." Nolan looks deep into humanity, into people with struggles and personalities, and asks these philosophical questions about them. He asks these in an age where he sees the simplicity of technology, flat design, flashy televised marketing ads, destroying the individuality of people and destroying the critical minds. In the context of the time surrounding Christopher Nolan's films, they are some of the trickiest films one can endure, almost a battle to keep up with. But one just feels better for watching them. Christopher Nolan is especially unique when it comes down to the structuring of his films, where he expresses very unique elements of his style through the use of production codes and narrative media conventions. Nolan certainly deploys his own immersive aspects in his films, and especially how it centralizes around his concept of character and what a good lead should be. Nolan certainly appears to have his own little trivial things he likes to include, like his desire to use CG for enhancements, not creating the entire world with it. Things like these seemingly don't mean all that much, but in a Nolan film, it all comes together in a journey for the audience. Nolan is perhaps most well known for his non-linear timelines. structuring the concept of time in what is arguably Nolan's most iconic stylistic choice yet, heavily favouring flashbacks, timelines, and stories that seem to wrap around the character. Wherever they turn, the audience follows, and they go on a journey through this character. Inception features an abundance of flashbacks sprinkled in through exposition, and more interestingly, the present world the characters are actually exploring. Ariadne experiences the past of Cobb directly in the present as she enters and interferes with his dream. Nolan portrays aspects of both Cobb's past and the eternal struggles of him in one scene, thanks to the key concept of the film, being the entering and incepting of people's dreams in a physical world. It becomes clear through this visualization of the past that Cobb is tortured by some event that transpired in this hotel, but we are never given the full picture because we see the world through the lens of the characters. Memento is the movie that most heavily depicts this non-linear structuring of time, with the infamous hairpin timeline structure that Nolan executes. The movie depicts Leonard Shelby, a man with a type of amnesia that limits his short-term memory to short segments of the day, forgetting it all very quickly and relying on notes he leaves behind for himself. The film structure cuts between two timelines, one that plays in reverse chronological order in colour, and the other that plays chronologically in black and white, both coming to emergence at the end of the film, where both the character and the audience are shown the true nature of what Leonard has become, where we receive an explanation of why Leonard suspected and killed Teddy in the very beginning of the film. The audience experiences the same journey along with Lenny, arriving at the same conclusion he does, that his memory and the whole journey to reach the center point of the story has been hijacked and completely mangled by his own self. The audience's own logical thought having failed them up to this point, with Lenny headed straight back into the meaningless hunt we just experienced, trapped inside this chase forever. The audience and Lenny face the external struggles of the authentic world surrounding him, something Nolan prides himself on building, but it is the combination of both struggles that provides such a complex twist and meaning at the end. The audience is helpless at the face of this realization as the movie is finished, and although we are now aware of what Leonard would go on to do upon discovering that he is his own manipulator, he will still go on to become a blind and lost killer because the film ends, and thus the world is made completely authentic. The audience didn't get what they wanted, which was seeing Lenny after he murdered Lenny, but they got something real. They didn't get to see him step back and see the bigger picture around him. He's stuck in that loop forever as far as the audience is concerned, and as far as the character believes he is too. As soon as the audience is shown the bigger picture, the film ends. Non-linear structuring of time is Nolan's key trick that he is able to deploy to surround the audience in that story maze, but everything across his movies supplement this sensation that Nolan brings to the audience. The handshots and inserts that Nolan frequents have the audience connect interactively to the character and their world. It's all built around this central concept. In seeing the character's hands in action, the audience is drawn to the interaction and can envision themselves in it, just as they can with the deeply personal inserts that Nolan splices in there, meaning shots that are close up and show us details up close, putting us directly in the film, the world, and or the character. In Insomnia, for example, we see Detective Dormer slowly degenerate into a sleepless mess towards the end of the film, scenes where we feel drowsy and blind thanks to the perspective of the character that Nolan gives us. This strategy of the story maze and all its interworking elements is how Nolan can make us think critically. We don't simply float at the top of the world, we're immersed in it. Nolan creates an authentic world, even to the actors, such as Interstellar where no green screens are used at all. Where Interstellar is in theory an amalgamative hodgepodge of interdimensional sci-fi nonsense, Nolan brings to life this story by blending the lines of reality and fiction, by placing us in the character amidst their own internal struggle that is personified by the world and universe around them. We don't care that these extra-dimensional beings are pure fiction, because the story isn't really about them, it's about what it all means to Cooper. This is most obvious in Inception, where Cobb's subconscious enemy is literally manifested into a danger that will kill him, opposed to the actual external threat of the rest of the cast, but it is present in all his films.
Look at you. You're just a shade. You're just a shade of my real life.
The Dark Knight Rises puts Batman back up against that hole he fell down as a child, but he's not lifted outside of it this time as with the beginning of the Dark Knight trilogy. He lets go of that rope that kept him safe the whole time and faced that challenge of the leap of faith. That is what Nolan seeks to do. There is no social or political commentary attached to moments like these, just messages of heroism, triumph, internal strength. It's all about the blend between the audience and the character, this blend being no different to the ones in the films of reality and fiction. Nolan takes us through the story and takes us on a journey of figuring it out, discovering a new perspective every single time without fail. Inception, despite depicting a fake story to us about how they take Fisher through the stages of dealing with his father's loss, could be a movie on its own. And when you take a step back, you can realize that Nolan has incepted you. Symbols of water drown the protagonist in their own internal struggle. Symbols of hands have you connect deeply with the protagonist. It all culminates to taking the audience on the same journey as the one they presented. That is the special connection Nolan creates in his movies with the masterful manipulation of time. He achieves manipulation of the mind and heart. The Prestige does the same thing with its setup of the magic trick, taking us through the same process and concept Nolan tackles in the movie, the art of the illusion, fooling the audience the whole way right to the end. Insomnia has the audience suffer with Detective Dormer, tortured with blows and weakness as a representation for his struggle with moral ambiguity, where we can connect that idea of the ethical dilemma and pain we feel because we are drawn into the driver's seat with Dormer, experiencing all the tortures associated with being unsure whether he killed his partner for real. The only few times where we step outside of that story maze is when the character does, usually in the conclusion of the film. Bruce struggles with figuring out what he is to Gotham, realizing that he needs to be something else for Gotham at the end of the Dark Knight in order to save it, sacrificing his own perception and legacy as a hero for the benefit of the city. We can only step out of that mindset of the hero proud to save everyone when Batman himself does. That's the true journey of a character's story in a Nolan film. Nolan will always connect us to his films in a way that no other director can. That is his intention and purpose, to bring the audience on an exciting, thrilling, external journey only to lure them carefully into a powerful story and re-evaluation of internal character. So please go watch basically all of his movies right now, or I'll trap you in a labyrinth of your own internal struggles and watch you drown in it and squirm. But after you've watched them, you can gain that new perspective of the situation, of the world, and be smarter for watching movies.